Hey tube, Poopslag here, and this is TurboFet, an open source puzzle game I've been working on in Godot. Source code's linked below if you want to see how it all works. But this month, I was setting up the game's Steam page, which involves a bunch of capsule art and descriptions and a bunch of little steps, so I'll explain what I did there. I also added features to the game, so if you're a novice, you can turn down the difficulty and make it a little more accessible, or if you're just used to Tetris and wanted to have things like whole pieces and line pieces, you can do that now as well. I also added some features for Spanish speakers. Some of the translation stuff didn't quite fit in the game yet, so I cleaned that up as well. Let me show you what I did. So I'd never set up a Steam page before, but the process is you first convert your Steam account to a Steamworks account. You give Valve $100 for each game you want to list, and then there's just a laundry list of tax questions and personal questions about your company and financial status and all that stuff. Pretty boring stuff, but the most pertinent ones to me were whether you've registered as an LLC, which is something that I guess you do if you want to protect yourself financially from lawsuits, which I haven't done yet. They say you don't have to do it for your first game. It's not really that big of a deal yet. And then who people should contact if they have a problem with the game, which I was like, well, I don't want to give them my personal email address or my phone number or my address, so I ended up creating a throwaway email, which redirects to my main email, which seems like an okay approach. So next, for decorating the Steam page, I had to create this minute-long gameplay video. I'm careful to show off the squish moves and making a box in the first 3 seconds, so you can see right away, oh, this is a little different from the games I'm used to. I also show off things like the crazy level gimmicks, really hard and fast-paced play, the creature editor and level editor, and the cutscenes, because I think the little cute monsters are a big part of what makes the game special. So next, these two descriptions. The first is a short description where it's very concrete and to the point. You'll be stacking blocks. You'll be squishing pieces. There are gimmicky levels, so the player can glance at that and see okay, that sounds interesting to me. And then this long description where it's really tempting to just go full wall of text and say everything cool that's in the game. But instead, I have this little video. It's just at a glance shows you oh, okay, this is what it looks like to play. And these little colorful bullets, which I think break up the text nicely. And then lastly, this feature list, which apparently you just have to have or Steam won't approve your game. At least that's what I heard. So keywords are how Steam decides who to show your game to, so it's very important. And the strategy I've seen is you look at a few games that are similar to yours, look at their keywords, and borrow the ones that fit your game. And when you're done, Steam's little recommended games list at the bottom should match your game's genre. And you should see oh yeah, I'm making a Rogue Legacy, and that is sort of similar to Hades or whatever, This didn't really work for me though, and when I looked at Pedal Crash's recommended games, it didn't really work for them too. Would I think, oh, I like Pedal Crash, I should definitely play Freedom Planet 2 or Ocean's Heart. These are technically puzzle games, and that I'm sure they have puzzles in them, oh, you have to find the blue gem and then that opens up the crystal cave or whatever, but we know what a puzzle game looks like. This is a puzzle game. This is a puzzle game. But there are no tags for these kinds of puzzle games on Steam, so it's very hard to discover them, and it's hard for Steam to recommend them. Overall, I'm just a little discouraged, and I just don't think people are going to be able to find my game for the same reason I can't find theirs. So next up was the capsule art, which are the little images you see in Steam. So when you see a list of 20 games or so, and you're ooh, that one looks fun, I'll click that. That reason is why people say you should not cheap out. You should hire a professional. Do not use a screenshot. Do not do this yourself. Do a good job, But I did it myself anyway. I did try to do a very good job and spend a lot of time on this. I did a whole bunch of proof of concept sketches and got some feedback. Here's this first one, which is sort of just the whole Candy Crush vibe of this game is fun, you should play it with this big cute monster. And the second one is a little bit more antagonistic and I think honest to the game's eventual message, where you're chucking food at a customer, get back here, and they're trying to get away and the vegetables are chasing you. This third one is sort of the buddy cop vibe between you and Fat Sensei, where you're we're in this together, and I think that's also kind of a cool message. But both this and the previous one I think sort of don't emphasize the game's genre that much. It looks more like maybe an action game or a story-based game. So this fourth one is, again, sort of antagonistic, where this customer's clearly had way too much, and you're eat more food. And I think a little bit more honest, but it doesn't make the game look fun. It's almost like this is Saw, the puzzle game, or something weird. And then this fifth one is more just, here's this customer who's had way too much, which I think is sort of a vibe, and some people are into the game for it. But in the end, it ended up going with the first idea after soliciting a lot of feedback from the TurboFet Discord, my friends and stuff. And this is the one that people seem to like the most. So they did ask me, though, to mix elements from the other ones. So I was okay, they like this text more and they like this background, and make sure to have the blocks shown a little bit. So I did all that stuff, which meant I had to draw this big annoying block background. It's very complex, and all these little lines. I mean, it took forever to draw. And then the character, this is more my wheelhouse. This is stuff I'm used to drawing. But I did try to do the lines a little differently and sort of blend them into the character more. And so when it's shrunken down, you don't just see these harsh black lines around the character. And then the logo I got to design. And so that was all fun. And I made all these things very big. So then when they got shrunken down into the different size and shaped capsules, I didn't have to redo all that work. So it was pretty easy to do that part. But man, just like drawing and doing all the sketches and stuff, in total, I think I spent about 23 hours on this stuff. But people said you shouldn't cheap out, so I made sure to take this very seriously. So when I was typing up the Steam descriptions saying things like this game is fun for beginners and for experts, I realized I need to make this game more fun for beginners. They'll probably just get frustrated and not be able to get to the end and feel sad. So I added some cheats, and the first one was a way to slow the pieces down where you can say I want them to drop a little bit slower or a lot slower or just don't even drop at all. And this was actually done in 3 parts. The first most intuitive part for me was like this percent change where it just says, okay, all the pieces drop at like a quarter speed. But that's not enough by itself because eventually when the pieces are dropping at like 20G, a quarter of 20G is still like 5G, which is like still way too fast. So the next thing was a speed mapping where when you slow the game down, it'll say, okay, now 20G, if a level said it wanted to run at 20G, that corresponds to like speed 1G. Or even at the slowest speeds, they'll say, like, oh, you're playing at speed 9, that's too fast for you. Let's slow that down to speed 5. And just a little one-to-one mapping of how fast the level thinks it should be, and then how fast it'll be for you because we want to be gentle. And then the third thing was to make all the levels shorter when you're playing at the low speeds because, getting like $2,000, for someone who plays at a very fast speed, that might only take them 2 or 3 minutes, but for someone who's new and doesn't understand combos and stuff like that, that'll take them forever. So the levels are just shorter also. So a lot of Tetris players coming to TurboFat were like, I need line pieces. I can't get by without them. So I added line pieces as a cheat you can turn on. Intuitively, you might think this is just like add the line pieces into the bag, but some TurboFat levels only use like a 1-piece or 2-piece piece bag. So you wouldn't want half the pieces to be line pieces. So instead, line pieces just use their own little separate queue where every 8 pieces or so, you will get a line piece. And it's shuffled just like a regular bag. I also added this hold piece cheat so you can turn it on and then it behaves just like the hold piece in Tetris. The playfield frame has a second version where it pops out this little square to the left, and luckily there's happened to be room for it already. And then the controls, there's this hold piece which shows up and disappears based on whether you have that cheat on. I didn't want people to see like the hold piece option in the controls and be like, why isn't it working? So yeah, it only shows up if you have the cheat. You can now retry levels using the R key, and also Shark on the TurboFat Discord was reporting that the ghost pieces were hard to see on his phone because it was black on a very dark gray, which makes total sense, and I've changed it to be a translucent looking piece instead, which I think looks way better anyways. So Hish of the TurboFat Discord localized the entire game into Spanish, including things like keybinds and level names, descriptions, all the dialogue in the game, and all the settings menu options, which is crazy. But then I noticed some of the Spanish phrases were longer than their English counterparts and would like stretch out the UI or get chopped off. And Godot already has this logic for like a fallback font, which is specifically for the case where you're like, I want to use Comic Sans, but if they're trying to display Arabic text, then that doesn't have glyphs in Comic Sans, so fall back to this other font instead. I wrote my own similar logic for something called a font fit label where it'll say, try to display this text, but if it doesn't fit in my label, use this font that's like a 12-point font. If that still doesn't fit, try like a 10-point font. And it just has a set of fonts it tries until it fits. So I started getting bug reports related to my use of yield statements, where I might have, for example, logic that says like play a you win sound effect and then wait for 2 seconds and then show the end of level screen. But if the user restarts the level during those 2 seconds, then that code will still run. So to prevent that code from running, I adopted this other pattern where I have like a timers node, and then if I need to do something 2 seconds later, I'll add a timer to that node. And then if the user restarts, then that timer, I delete all the timers that are in that group. That's something that you can't really do with Godot's built-in temporary timers. And this seems like an okay approach, but I'm curious if you've solved a similar problem in your Godot game. I'd love to hear what you did. So that's it for November. Getting my game on Steam was a huge step, but it took a little longer than I expected, so I didn't get to pimp my game out to like the puzzle communities I'm a part of and my streamer friends. So I'm looking to do that in December, get them all to try it out. I also skipped refactoring day in November, which is a big no-no, but I got to clean up all the messy code I've written here and there. I have like a laundry list of like, fix this thing too, so I got to fix all that stuff. After that though, I want to develop this new region, the Poke Desert, which is going to be a desert-themed area with like chocolate-dipped cacti. It's going to have a cool aesthetic. I'm looking forward to sketching that out and at least dipping my toe in the pool of like getting that a little bit done by the end of December. Lemony Thickets took about 3 or 4 months, so this is not a small undertaking making a whole new area with like all the new cutscenes and character design and all the art. There's a lot to do, but we'll do a little of it. In the meantime, if you can wishlist the game on Steam, it would really help me out because convince the algorithms that my game doesn't suck. So please, you know, and if you want to try it out, it's still free on itch.io and all that stuff. Anyways, see you guys next month. Thanks for watching. Later.